My husband told me he was at a sales conference in Cleveland. He had told me on a Friday morning in March over coffee in our kitchen with the kind of casual ease he had used 1,000 times before that he would be back on Sunday evening, that the conference would run long, that he would call me when he could. He had kissed me on the forehead before he left. He had said, "I love you, Caroline. Drive safe to your sisters." He had walked out of our house at 7:15 a.m., gotten into his Lexus, and driven away. On Sunday morning at 9:23 a.m., I sat at the kitchen counter with a cup of coffee, opened a small app on my phone that I had not opened in 6 years, and typed in a password I had memorized but never used. And I saw, on a small map on my screen, that my husband's wedding ring was not in Cleveland. My husband's wedding ring was in a small condominium complex in Greensboro, North Carolina, 600 miles in the wrong direction. My name is Caroline. I am 52 years old. 6 years ago, on our 25th wedding anniversary, I gave my husband, Mark, a custom wedding ring with a small GPS tracking chip embedded in the inner band. The jeweler had installed it at my request, telling me with a small smile that he had done this for at least a dozen women in the past 3 years. I had told Mark the ring was custom engraved with our wedding date. I had not told him about the chip. And for 6 years, I had paid the $8 monthly subscription fee for the tracking app, and I had never once opened it, until that Sunday morning. Let me tell you why I finally did. Mark and I were married in 1994. We met when I was 21, marrying when I was 23. We had 2 children, our son Ethan, now 28, and our daughter Olivia, now 25. Mark worked as a regional sales director for a medical device company. He traveled almost every weekend. He had been doing that for our entire marriage. I was a school librarian for 26 years. I worked Monday to Friday. My weekends, when Mark was away, were often quiet, full of long walks and tea with my older sister Diane, and books and the occasional visit to my mother before she died in 2017. Mark traveled the way some men travel, with a small leather suitcase, a garment bag for one suit, and a habit of bringing home small souvenirs from every city he visited. A coffee mug from Denver, a snow globe from Chicago, a small paperweight from Atlanta. Our house was, by 2019, a small museum of his sales territories. The kids used to laugh about it. "Dad and his magnets," Olivia would say. I had never, in 25 years of marriage, suspected him of being unfaithful. I want to be clear about that. I had not been a paranoid wife. I had not been the woman who checks pockets, reads texts, sniffs collars. So when I gave him the GPS ring on our 25th anniversary in the spring of 2019, I want to explain to you exactly what I was thinking, because the answer is going to surprise you. I was not suspicious of him. I was scared for him. In January of 2019, 3 months before our anniversary, my husband had had a small medical scare. He had been driving home from a conference in Buffalo when he had pulled over to the side of the highway because his vision had suddenly gone blurry and his left arm had gone numb. He had called me from the side of the road. I had told him to call 911. He had refused. He had said it was probably nothing, he was probably tired, but he had agreed to drive himself to a hospital in Rochester. They had told him it was a minor stroke, a warning. He had, in the doctor's words, gotten lucky. They had put him on blood thinners and statins. They had told him to reduce his stress. They had told him to take it easy on the travel. He had agreed, on the phone with me in the hospital room, that he would consider cutting back on his weekend trips. He did not cut back. In the 3 months between his stroke and our anniversary, he traveled exactly the same amount as before, 4 weekends a month, sometimes 5. And I had decided in those 3 months that I was scared he would have another stroke on the road, alone, and that nobody would know where to find him. So when our 25th anniversary came, I went to the jeweler in our town, a man named Walter, who had made my mother's engagement ring in 1962 and who I had known since I was a child. I asked Walter if it was possible to put a small GPS tracker inside a wedding ring. Walter had looked at me with his old, kind eyes and said, "Caroline, dear, I have been making rings for 46 years. There are two reasons women come to me asking that question. One is the reason you are about to give me, the other is the reason you do not yet know is yours." I asked him what he meant. Walter had said, "Some women want the chip because they are scared their husband will have a heart attack on the road. Some women want the chip because they have suspicions they are not yet ready to name. I am not going to ask you which one you are. I am going to install the chip, and I am going to tell you what I tell every woman who walks in here with this question. You do not have to use it. The chip can sit in the ring for 30 years and never be turned on. But once it's in there, you have it. And someday, you may be very glad you did." I had thought at the time that Walter was being a little dramatic. I had paid him for the chip. I had given the ring to Mark on our anniversary, with the wedding date engraved on the inner band. Mark had cried when he opened it. He had hugged me. He had told me he loved me. He had put the ring on his finger that night and worn it every single day for the next 6 years. For 6 years, I never once opened the tracking app. I had it on my phone. I had paid the $8 a month subscription quietly out of an account Mark did not check, and I had never logged in. Until that Sunday morning. Let me tell you why I finally did. 3 weeks ago, on a Wednesday in March, a small thing happened that I cannot fully explain. I was at the dentist for a cleaning. The hygienist, a woman named Carla I had been seeing for 15 years, was making small talk while she scaled my teeth. She mentioned, in passing, that she had recently driven down to North Carolina to visit her sister. I said, "Oh, what part?" Carla said, "Greensboro. It's a nice town, very calm. My sister has been there for years." I said, "Oh, that's lovely. My husband travels a lot, but I do not think he has ever been to Greensboro." Carla paused with the scaler in my mouth. Then she said, very lightly, "Oh, are you sure? I thought I saw him actually the last time I was there, about a year and a half ago. I thought it was him at a coffee shop near my sister's building. I waved, but he didn't see me. I assumed I was wrong." She kept cleaning my teeth. I did not respond. I sat in that dentist chair, looking at the ceiling, with my mouth full of metal instruments, and I felt something I had never felt in 26 years of marriage. I felt the small, cold, very specific certainty of a woman who has just been handed a piece of information she had not been looking for and which she now could not unsee. I went home from the dentist that afternoon. I made dinner. I asked Mark, casually over our salads, where he was going that weekend. He said, "Oh, the same, Cleveland. I think it's the 3rd time in 2 months. They're really pushing me on the Midwest." I said, I keep meaning to ask, do you have any old colleagues in North Carolina?" Mark looked up from his salad. He said, "North Carolina? No, my territory has never gone south. Why would I?" I want you to understand the moment that followed, because in 26 years of marriage, my husband had never lied to me about something I could verify. I had not yet verified anything. I had only the dentist's comment from a year and a half ago. But Mark had answered too quickly, too cleanly, without the small, natural pause people take when they're searching their memory for the right answer. And in that moment, sitting across from my husband at our dinner table with a salad between us, I knew with the cold knowledge a wife develops after 26 years of paying attention that he was lying. I did not say anything that night. I did not say anything Friday morning when he kissed my forehead and drove away to Cleveland. I did not say anything Saturday. On Sunday morning at 9:23 a.m., I sat at our kitchen counter with my cup of coffee, with the morning sun coming through the window over the sink, and opened the tracking app on my phone that I had not opened in 6 years and typed in a password I had memorized but never used. And I saw, on a small map on my screen, that my husband's wedding ring was not in Cleveland. My husband's wedding ring was in a small condominium complex in Greensboro, North Carolina, 600 miles in the wrong direction. That is the end of Block 1. Block 2 begins on what I saw on that map and ends 9 minutes later. The map showed a single red pin: Greensboro, North Carolina, a condominium complex on a street called Oakwood Lane. The pin had been there for 38 hours, the app told me. Mark's ring had arrived at that address on Friday afternoon at 2:14 p.m., and it had not moved since. I sat at the counter and I looked at the pin. Then I scrolled the app's history. The app, I discovered, had been tracking the ring's location for 6 years. Every single trip Mark had taken since 2019 was logged. Every conference, every weekend, every supposed Cleveland, every supposed Atlanta, every supposed Buffalo. I scrolled back through the history. Of the approximately 280 weekend trips Mark had taken since 2019, exactly 73 of them had ended at the same address in Greensboro, North Carolina. 73 weekends in 6 years, more than once a month on average. I looked up the address on Google. It was a 2-bedroom condominium owned, according to the public records, by a woman named Allison Clark, 41 years old, divorced in 2017, a real estate agent. I looked her up on Facebook. She had a public profile. There were photos of her son, a boy of about 7 with curly brown hair and Mark's exact eyes. The boy was named Henry. I sat at the counter for 9 minutes. I did not cry. Not yet. I stood up. I walked into our home office. I took out a manila folder from the bottom drawer of my desk, a folder I had used for work that I had emptied out the previous week. I labeled it in my own handwriting, "For Diane." Diane was my older sister. I screenshotted every single page of the GPS tracking history, 6 years. I printed all of them. I put them in the folder. I screenshotted Allison's Facebook profile. I screenshotted the photos of Henry. I printed those too. I put it all in the folder. Then I called my sister. Diane lives 45 minutes away from me. She has been a divorce attorney for 31 years. She picked up on the second ring. I said, "Diane, I need you to come over right now. Mark is having an affair. He has had a child with the woman. I have 6 years of GPS evidence. I want to file for divorce before he comes home tomorrow night." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Diane said, "Okay, Caroline, I am leaving right now. Do not contact him. Do not text him. Do not call him. Do not let on that anything has changed. I will be there in 40 minutes. She arrived in 38. Diane spent the rest of Sunday at my kitchen table. She went through my GPS folder page by page. She made notes. She asked me questions about our finances, our property, our investments. She had me pull out our tax returns for the previous 6 years. She found, within 45 minutes, 3 things I had not noticed. First, Mark had been making monthly transfers of $2,000 from a joint money market account to an account labeled Savings Secondary for 6 years and 3 months. The total transferred was approximately $150,000. The destination account was one I had never heard of. Diane checked it. The destination account was at a bank Mark had opened in 2018 with a branch address in Greensboro, North Carolina. Second, Mark had taken out a small life insurance policy in 2019, naming a beneficiary I did not recognize. The beneficiary was Henry Clark. Third, Mark had been very quietly paying for private school tuition at a prep school in Greensboro for the past 2 academic years. The amount was $24,000 per year. Diane looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "Caroline, your husband has been running a parallel life for at least 7 years. There is a financial trail. I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Do you want to confront him, or do you want to win?" I said, "I want to win." Diane said, "Okay, then this is what we are going to do." Diane spent that afternoon drafting motions on her laptop in my dining room. By Sunday evening, she had prepared the following: a divorce filing, ready to be filed first thing Monday morning, a motion to freeze all joint assets, a motion to discover any and all accounts in Mark's sole name, including the bank in North Carolina, a request for a court order to bar Mark from the marital home pending divorce proceedings, a separate request for a temporary restraining order based on the documented financial fraud. Diane also called a private investigator she had worked with for years. The investigator's name was Linda. Linda agreed on the phone Sunday evening to drive to Greensboro overnight and photograph Mark leaving Allison's condominium on Monday morning. She did. She got the photographs. She emailed them to Diane at 6:15 a.m. At 6:30 Monday morning, Diane filed the divorce papers. The motions were activated by 9 a.m. By the time Mark called me from the road at 3:20 p.m. Monday afternoon, asking how my weekend had been, Diane and I were sitting at my kitchen table together eating lunch. Mark said, "Hey honey, I'm about an hour out. Do you need me to grab anything?" I said, "Mark, pull over." He said, "What?" I said, "Pull over to the side of the road, please. I have something to tell you and I don't want you to hear it while you're driving." There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear his turn signal. He said, "Okay, Caroline, I am pulled over. What is it?" I said, "Mark, the ring I gave you for our 25th anniversary has had a GPS chip in it for 6 years. I have been tracking your location since you put it on your finger in 2019. I know about Allison. I know about Henry. I know about the bank account in North Carolina. I know about the private school. I know everything." There was a very long silence. Then Mark said, "Caroline, please let me explain." I said, "I do not need you to explain. I have already filed for divorce. The papers were served at your office this morning. Your assets are frozen. The house is in my name only. I checked the deed at noon. You will not be coming back here tonight. You will be going to a hotel. My sister Diane will be in touch with your attorney. Goodbye, Mark." And I hung up. The divorce was finalized in 9 months. Mark, faced with 6 years of GPS evidence, financial fraud documentation, and photographs of him leaving Allison's condominium, did not contest a single term. I received the house, the lake property in Vermont my parents had left me, 80% of the joint assets, and a structured spousal support arrangement. I kept my job at the school library, I kept the dog, I kept my last name because I had earned it for 26 years, and I was not going to let his choices take it from me. My children took it hard. Both of them broke off contact with their father for the first 6 months. Olivia has slowly resumed limited contact. Ethan has not, and may never. That's his choice, not mine. Mark moved to Greensboro within 4 months of the divorce finalization. He lives, by all accounts, with Allison and Henry. I do not know what he has told them about me or about us, and I have decided I do not need to know. Walter, the jeweler who installed the chip in 2019, retired last year. I sent him a card after the divorce was finalized. I told him he had been right. I told him that some women come in scared and some come in suspicious, and that I had been the first kind, and that the chip had ended up serving the second purpose anyway. Walter wrote me back in his careful handwriting on cream stationery. He wrote, "Caroline, dear, I have been making rings for 46 years. There is no difference between the two kinds of women. There is only the woman who knows enough to ask and the woman who does not. You knew enough to ask. The rest was always going to follow." I keep his letter in my nightstand drawer. I am 52 years old. I am divorced. I am quiet, mostly. I have my work and my sister and my dog and my books and a kitchen with sunlight in the morning and the unbothered peace of a woman who finally gets to live in a house where every single thing in it has only one history, hers. If you have ever had that feeling that something was off and been told you were imagining it, if you have ever wished just once that you had proof, if you have ever known in the back of your mind but waited until you could be sure, leave one word in the comments below. The word is ring, for every woman who trusted but verified and was right. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story. We share a new one every week about quiet women who knew exactly what they were doing the entire time everyone underestimated them. Until then, ask the jeweler. You may never need the chip, but it's good to know it's there.